Hey people. Um, I the last day or so, it's been really interesting since my post yesterday, where I kind of meanderingly spoke and then at some point realized, wait, I think I'm in limbo. I think that's what's happening here. It's been interesting to just kind of witness where I am, and I managed to have a reasonably full day today, so I didn't kind of settle into that too much, but I did, in sort of like some moments of downtime here and there, I did kind of feel this interesting energy coming through, and uh, somebody commented on my video from yesterday that I'm feeling full moon energy, and that makes total sense. That makes total, and there's this like what she was saying with Jennifer. Um, Beautiful comment about how the full moon kind of is the closing the door on the past, and now we're in limbo until the new moon. And that made total sense to me. I was like, oh, okay, that that actually exactly lines up with my experience, and how kind of fitting that event took place right on the day that we closed on this new house. The full moon was that night. And that's amazing when, there's a kind of celestial acknowledgement of what's happening in our kind of practical daily lives. I hadn't even thought about that until I read her comment, and I was like, oh my God, yeah, there's a very auspicious moon that happened that night. And so I think, what's kind of coming through for me is there's a way in which my energy just feels, it's actually it's interesting for me. It's healthy for me, I think. Even though I'm a very process oriented person, and I'm doing a lot of work now, and a lot of kind of, I would say, contemplative work, mindfulness practices, where I sort of get out of my goal orientedness a little bit. But I would say that I still have a natural proclivity towards being very goal oriented. And so it's interesting for me to sort of be in a state of like, what's happening now? What am I doing here? Where is this going now? There's a real practice in just being willing to be there. And I think, I also noticed, one thing that was conspicuous about today was I put Annalise down for her nap, and she went to sleep so hard. I don't know that I've ever, or at least I certainly not in my recent memory, can I remember her falling asleep so fast. I was reading her a book. She lay back on me as I was reading the book, and like by the time I put her in her crib, and before I was done singing her songs, she was out like a light, completely. And then she slept for over 3 hours, and I had to wake her up. And that echoes where I am too. There's just a sense of like a lot is changing, even though on the surface, I have very full days and I'm doing plenty of work. It's not that, but I'm not. Doesn't feel. It's not like a crazily insane period of work for me. But with all the different components, with all the different aspects to what's going on, shifting to Albuquerque, buying this new house, the new creative project ramping up, there's a lot of stuff kind of converging. And I think, the thing that jumps out at me is being as present as I can with it. I've been reading towards the end of the David Hawkins book recently, and it's such a beautiful book, and he does such an amazing job of describing how every feeling can be let go. Letting go is the title of the book. How every emotion will release us if we experience it fully, if we just allow ourselves to feel it. Like when we feel our feelings, then they are given an opportunity to do what they need to do, and they eventually kind of run out. That energy becomes spent, and it's no longer necessary to kind of go round and round within us anymore. It's like we actually receive what that feeling is trying to tell us. And it's been a period where I've had a lot of that coming up. I've had a lot of, it's interesting when you're doing spiritual work. Sometimes you think, oh, okay, I'm through the phase where I have to process my anger, or I'm through the phase where I have to deal with loneliness or grief or whatever, because we go through a bunch of processing and we kind of feel done. We kind of feel like, okay, I don't think that that's going to trigger me anymore. But then new layers arrive. Then a new phase happens. A new set of circumstances comes barreling in, and this is just my experience right now. It's like, oh, okay, and I'm like, oh, clearly there's some anger left. Clearly there's some worthiness stuff left. And just being willing, I think, to face that, just being willing to sit with it and actually feel it, not run away from it, not make it more than it is, not get a payoff by telling everybody about it. There's a kind of there's like a gentleness. This is what I've been saying to students recently. It's kind of like a gentleness and a rigorousness at the same time. There's a rigor with which we want to hold ourselves accountable and be honest, and the practice of letting go requires showing up and being conscious and not just allowing a feeling to blow through me and then get vented out into the world onto someone else. It requires actually that presence of mind, and at the same time it also requires just infinite sympathy and sort of self-empathy, so that when I'm not perfect, I'm not condemning myself, I'm not judging, I'm not creating, I'm not doing to myself what the pattern is. I'm letting myself feel the pattern, but I'm not acting it out inwardly or outwardly. And I think as this transitional period just kind of blows through my life, our lives, that feels like an important lesson. It feels like an important one. Be gentle and rigorous at the same time. And of course, it's what I've been saying to my students recently too. So yeah. Thanks, people. Thanks for being in my life. You can tell there's more emotion here. There's more stuff under the surface that's going to come out in the next week or two. We have a week from tomorrow we move, so it's going to be interesting. But I appreciate all of you. Love you very much. I'll see you very soon.